We did hear after your earnings announcements that you have an intention to double copper output. Can you give us some idea on how that's going to be achieved and the time frame that you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely, I can. Look, we're very excited about the portfolio of opportunities that we've built over the last 7 or 8 years. We've got some great, very low-cost operating assets already in South Australia and growing in Brazil. But we've got brownfield expansions and a new greenfield expansion that's approaching FID in West Musgrave towards the latter half of this year. So there's a lot of growth in the business, and as you said, we can potentially take this company from 140-odd thousand tonnes of copper equivalent production to well over 340,000 tonnes of copper equivalent production in the next half a dozen years. We've also got more than half of our resource base yet to be classified in reserve. So there's potential above and beyond that, which we're actively working on.
How about the demand side of the picture, though? Because we do see commodities trading in China suffering some pretty sharp falls at the moment. Copper itself off about 3%, and this is your main product. What is your outlook for commodities prices?
Look, I'm very bullish on the medium to long-term fundamentals for copper and nickel. Both of these commodities demand are growing strongly. I think we're entering an era of decarbonisation and electrification all around the world. On the supply side, global copper head grades are declining, operating costs are going up. New copper and nickel discoveries are at an all-time historic low. So that bodes well for if you are a producer of these commodities. So I think OZ Minerals is set up exceptionally well. That's not to say that we won't have short-term volatility, of course, in commodity markets.
What about other battery metals? I mean, you talked about some progress when it comes to mining in the Northern Territory. What metals are we talking about here, and what can we expect when it comes to the broader portfolio of OZ Minerals?
Yeah, look, great question. Over the last 8 or 10 years, we've been very focused on building a copper portfolio, and I would say we've got an enviable copper pipeline of projects at the moment. Recently, with the West Musgrave project, as we've taken it through to the last stages of study, we've taken the opportunity to pivot our strategy to modern minerals. And for us, modern minerals now means copper and nickel. So we'll be looking to expand our pipeline of opportunities into both copper and nickel. We may in time look for other commodities, but for now, they're the two primary commodities we see the biggest opportunities over the medium to long term.
And you recently just knocked back a takeover bid from BHP. Do you expect a higher offer? How would that impact your conversations?
It was very clear, the board made a very clear decision that the offer that we received does not adequately compensate our shareholders for the fundamentals, nor the unique nature of OZ Minerals' core business, which has low cost, long life operating assets, all in a tier 1 jurisdictions. We felt the offer was a bit opportunistic and certainly undervalues the business. So from our perspective, we're getting on with creating value for our stakeholders. We've got a lot of milestones coming up through the rest of this year. So our teams are very focused on reaching those milestones, creating value and doing what we do very well.
China, of course, one of the key consumers of the commodities that you produce. We are looking ahead to the China Congress at the moment. Xi Jinping expected to get that third term. What's your biggest hope or wish for China's economic planners over the coming 5 years?
Look, I think one thing about all countries, I think we can say when it comes to copper and nickel, copper is a key ingredient for the industrialisation of every nation. It's a core commodity for the consumption of white goods. And now with the unified approach to decarbonisation, it's also on every country's agenda to actually decarbonise and clean up the atmosphere, if you like. So when you're in commodities like copper and nickel, I think China included, these feature heavily in every country's future strategy. So I can just see demand increasing almost irrespective of the individual choices that any one country makes.
What are you expecting in terms of infrastructure in China and how that could actually help demand? Because, of course, globally, we're now already talking about a potential recession. How's that factoring into your base case for prices going forward?
Yeah, I understand. Look, it's really interesting. If you look at some of the independent research, and we subscribe to a number of them, the CRU is probably the broader recognised data set. I think the CRU anticipate a more than 6 million tonne deficit of copper within the next 10 years. And that bodes, I think, exceptionally well if you're a producer. So there aren't enough deposits globally to actually fill that 6 million tonne odd gap in the sector. That's about 20 or 30% of the current size of the copper market, if you like, and those deposits are not coming through. So irrespective of short-term deviations and fluctuations, with that supply deficit and the growing demand because of electrification and decarbonisation, we are going to see the supply-demand delta continue to drive and prices continue to go up as a result of that.